A jukebox glowing in the corner of an empty diner, needle dropping on a record played 10,000 times. Outside, rain on a highway that swallowed more legends than anyone admits.
Only fly.
Country music built its mythology on the road. The tour bus, the small plane, the late-night drive home. And for 10 of its biggest stars, that road became the place they died.
Back to Alabama.
Not from age, not illness. Killed by a bullet, a crash, a decision someone else made for them.
George Pratt, his partner, and brother Billy too.
Subscribe now. Because by number 1, you'll understand why this genre's most beloved outlaw never trusted a bank, and why that choice may have gotten him murdered in his own front yard.
The phone will let me be.
The countdown begins now.
You might want.
Number 10, Blaze Foley, If I Could Only Fly. Austin, Texas, 1989. Blaze Foley had spent nearly 2 decades as country music's best-kept secret, a songwriter so respected that Merle Haggard and Lyle Lovett would later record his words. So broke he sometimes performed in a suit made of duct tape just to make people laugh instead of pity him.
If I could only...
On a February night, Foley got into an argument defending an elderly friend from the friend's own son, a dispute over the older man's disability check.
For us to bear.
The argument turned physical. A gun came out. Blaze Foley, a man who'd written some of the tenderest songs in the outlaw canon, was shot and killed protecting money that wasn't even his.
Dismal thinking on a dismal day.
He was buried without fanfare, his grave unmarked for years, his name known mostly to songwriters who passed his records around like scripture.
But I can hardly stand.
It took documentaries and cover versions by more famous names decades later to drag his story into the light. Audiences are only now discovering. Blaze Foley died broke, uninsured, and largely unknown to the mainstream audience that would eventually canonize him.
Sometimes I write happy songs.
The industry that now sells his catalog and licenses his songs for films did essentially nothing to support the man while he was alive to need it.
I wish you could come with me.
Number 9, Johnny Horton, North to Alaska.
North to Alaska. Go north.
Milano, Texas, November 5th, 1960. Johnny Horton had just wrapped a show at the Skyline Club in Austin, the same venue where Hank Williams played his final Texas performance. A coincidence that would later feel less like coincidence and more like a curse.
To Alaska. Go north. The rush is on.
Horton climbed into his car afterward, driving toward home and toward a warning a fortune teller had given him months earlier.
Had a lonely, lonely man.
Horton had grown obsessed in his final months with predictions he would die violently, tied to water in Texas.
Needs a woman to love him all the time.
He'd discussed retiring, spooked by how persistent the premonition felt. On that November night, a pickup driven by a drunk 17-year-old crossed the center line and slammed head-on into Horton's car on a bridge over the Sabine River.
Alaska, go north, the rush is on.
Horton, only 35, died almost instantly, at the peak of his career. A #1 hit, still climbing the charts. The bridge, the water, the violence. All of it lined up with the warning he'd been carrying for months. Johnny Horton had privately confided his fear of this exact death to bandmates and family in the weeks before it happened, and still played the show that night rather than cancel and disappoint a crowd. The instinct to keep performing, even in fear, outweighed his own survival instinct. Number 8. Ira Louvin, When I Stop Dreaming. Half of the Louvin brothers, Ira Louvin was a man of savage contradictions, capable of writing devout, tender gospel harmonies while living a private life of drinking and rage that repeatedly nearly killed him long before it finally did. By 1965, Ira had survived being shot by a previous wife, multiple wrecks, and a reputation so volatile that even close friends kept their distance.
You may teach the flowers to bloom.
On June 20th, Ira and his fourth wife were driving through Williamsburg, Missouri, when a drunk driver crossed into their lane. The collision killed them both instantly.
In spring, alone and neglected.
The bitter detail buried in the wreckage report. The driver who killed Ira Louvin had, only 2 days earlier, been arrested for drunk driving and released.
Was the night when you told me you loved so.
Ira himself had been arrested for the exact same offense multiple times, spared consequences by fame and forgiving small-town courts.
That's when I'll stop thinking.
The man who finally killed him had been given the same second chance Ira always received, and used it to end his life. Court records confirm the driver responsible for Ira Louvin's death had been released from custody just 2 days prior on an identical drunk driving charge. A justice system too lenient with repeat offenders had already failed once before it failed fatally. Number 7. Cowboy Copas, Alabama. March 5, 1963. A single-engine Piper Comanche, overloaded, flying straight into a storm that had grounded every commercial pilot in the region. On board, Patsy Cline, manager pilot Randy Hughes, rising star Hawkshaw Hawkins, and Cowboy Copas, a Grand Ole Opry veteran who just clawed back to relevance after nearly a decade of decline. Copas had almost said no. He was tired, the weather reports troubling, commercial flights already canceled for the night.
I talk about you people have a whale of a time eating up chicken and...
But Hughes insisted the small plane could make it, and Copas, not wanting to seem difficult, climbed aboard anyway. Somewhere over Camden, Tennessee, the plane went down in dense fog. All 4 aboard were killed instantly.
Now there comes Sal walking down the street with the rundown.
Cowboy Copas, a man who had genuinely doubted the wisdom of that flight and voiced it, died anyway. A casualty of a culture where saying no felt more dangerous than getting on the plane.
I'm going back to Al.
Investigators later determined pilot Randy Hughes was not certified to fly using instruments alone, meaning he had no formal training to navigate the exact fog he flew directly into. A critical gap everyone aboard trusted him to have, and he did not.
Back to Alabama.
Number 6. Hawkshaw Hawkins, Lonesome 77203.
That want to speak to you.
He'd married singer Jean Shepard only months earlier. She was pregnant with their second child. Hawkshaw Hawkins had spent nearly 2 decades grinding through the middle tier of country stardom, And in 1963, for the first time, a song of his was finally climbing the charts. A title that would become almost unbearably ironic within weeks.
Keep the telephone beside me.
Hawkins was one of the kindest men on the Opry roster, a giant of a performer, with a gentleness off stage rare in a competitive community.
Just in case.
He hadn't planned to be on that Piper Comanche at all, added late to the benefit lineup. One more body on an aircraft already pushing its safe capacity.
At lonesome 77.
When the wreckage was found the next morning, Hawkins left behind a widow with a newborn and a song about loneliness sitting at the edge of the charts. A hit he'd never lived to see peak. Title and timing colliding into one of country music's cruelest coincidences. The aircraft was later found loaded beyond what aviation experts consider a safe margin for the conditions that night. A plane already carrying more risk than it should have took on one more passenger anyway, because nobody wanted to be the one left behind.
Where I'll be.
Number 5, Patsy Cline, Sweet Dreams. She almost didn't go. Patsy Cline had a bad feeling about that flight home, strong enough that she told friends and family she didn't expect to live much longer. She'd survived a horrific car accident 2 years earlier that nearly killed her, left visible scars and a permanent limp, and gave her a dark, resigned humor about mortality people mistook for melodrama until it wasn't. By March 1963, Cline was arguably the biggest female star in country music, a voice that crossed into pop radio and changed what a country song was allowed to sound like.
Having sweet dreams.
She just finished a benefit for the family of a DJ killed in a car accident. A bitter irony nobody in that room could have known was about to repeat itself in the sky above Tennessee.
Every night.
When the plane went down, Patsy Cline was 30, at the height of her powers, with a catalog that would define an entire genre's emotional vocabulary for the next 60 years. She never got to hear what she became. Patsy Cline had voiced a premonition of her own death to multiple people in the weeks before the crash, going so far as to help a friend rehearse a eulogy she wanted read at her funeral. Nobody treated the warning as anything but nerves, because the show, as always, was expected to go on. Number 4, Jim Reeves, He'll Have to Go.
Or is he holding you?
He was flying the plane himself. Jim Reeves, Gentleman Jim, a voice so smooth it redefined the country crooner, had recently earned his pilot's license, flying as both practical necessity and genuine passion.
Though love is blind, make up your mind.
On July 31st, 1964, he and his manager took off from Batesville, Arkansas, heading toward Nashville through weather already deteriorating.
Will understand. Put your sweet.
A thunderstorm swallowed the small aircraft over Brentwood, Tennessee, miles from Reeves's own home.
Bucks way down low.
Disoriented, the plane spun into a fall it never recovered from, crashing into woods so remote it took a search party of hundreds. Friends, fans, fellow musicians combing the wilderness on foot. 2 days to find the wreckage.
Me, tell me, do you love me?
Reeves was 39, one of the most successful crossover artists country music ever produced. A man whose voice would sell more records after his death than most artists manage alive.
I'll tell the man to turn the jukebox.
He died feet from home. In a storm he might have survived with a few more hours of instrument training he never had time to complete.
And you can tell your friend there with.
Jim Reeves was a relatively inexperienced pilot flying into deteriorating weather without full instrument certification. The same fatal gap that had killed Patsy Cline's pilot a year earlier. In the same region, under nearly identical conditions, a warning the industry never absorbed.
Though love is blind, make up your mind.
Number 3. Dottie West. Here Comes My Baby. August 30th, 1991. Dottie West was late for the Grand Ole Opry, a place she'd called home for 3 decades, ever since becoming the first female country artist to win a Grammy. Her own car had broken down, and rather than miss the show, she accepted a ride from an elderly fan, eager to help a legend he adored make it to the stage on time. That fan, driving too fast, lost control on an Opryland exit ramp. The car flipped multiple times. West, 64, suffered massive internal injuries.
Here comes my baby back.
She underwent emergency surgery and seemed, for a moment, to be stabilizing. Days later, her body succumbed to the trauma. The devastating detail almost nobody remembers. West had spent years battling serious financial trouble, her fortune eroded by bad business decisions, and an ex-husband's mismanagement. To the point she genuinely couldn't afford reliable transportation, to the very stage that made her famous. She died, in part, because she couldn't afford a working car.
Here comes my baby back.
At the time of her death, Dottie West was reportedly driving an unreliable vehicle because years of financial exploitation by management and an ex-husband had left one of country music's most decorated stars unable to afford dependable transportation. A quiet poverty hiding behind a legendary name. Number 2. Hank Williams. I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive. New Year's Eve, 1952. A snowstorm rolling across the Appalachians. 2 shows booked on back-to-back nights, and a 29-year-old with a spine already ruined by chronic pain, riding in the back of a Cadillac, driven by a college kid barely out of his teens. Hank Williams's official cause of death would later be recorded as heart failure. What that single line leaves out is who was in the car with him in his final hours, and what they'd put in his body. Riding along on that tour was a man calling himself a doctor, dispensing injections from a black bag, chloral hydrate, morphine substitutes, cocktails mixed by someone with no real medical license, and a prior conviction for forgery. Nobody vetted him. In an industry desperate to keep its stars performing no matter the cost, a man willing to hand out anything requested was exactly what the machine wanted. On that final drive, doses meant to keep a failing body upright instead helped stop it entirely. By the time the Cadillac pulled into a gas station in Oak Hill, West Virginia, Hank Williams had been gone for some time, and no one in that car had the training to know the difference between sleep and death. Heart failure was the official ruling. The man who put the drugs in his system faced no serious consequences and later gave interviews trading on his proximity to the death he likely hastened. The fraud posing as Hank Williams's doctor was investigated and connected to the case, but never seriously punished. The system that let an unlicensed forger administer drugs to a dying star in the back of a moving car faced no accountability at all. And to this day, no charge of homicide has ever officially attached to his name. Number 1. David Stringbean Akeman, Chewing Gum.
For the step is always chewing gum, yum, yum.
November 10th, 1973. Grandpa Jones pulled up to a farmhouse in Ridgetop, Tennessee, expecting to pick up his old friend for their usual post-show fishing trip. Instead, he found the front door open, the house ransacked, and two bodies, David Akeman, beloved as the banjo-picking comedian Stringbean, and his wife Estelle, shot dead by intruders while the couple performed at the Opry that same night.
Think about my pretty little girl, she's pretty as a plum.
Stringbean was famous for a habit that made him a target. He didn't trust banks. Having grown up during the Depression, he carried large sums of cash and reportedly hid the rest somewhere in or around his home, a fact whispered about often enough in Nashville that it reached the wrong ears. Two cousins broke in that night hunting for the money. They found almost none of it. They murdered two people for cash that wasn't even where they thought it was.
She had some feathers.
The killers were caught and convicted within months, aided by marked bills. But the story didn't end there. In 1996, a new homeowner renovating the property discovered rotting bags of cash hidden inside the farmhouse's chimney, over $20,000, sitting untouched for 23 years, while the man who'd hidden it, and the wife who died beside him, had already been in the ground for a generation.
Habit she had was one was bad, she's always chewing.
The money that got Stringbean and Estelle Akeman killed was recovered in the walls of their own home more than 2 decades after their murder. Proof that the fortune everyone assumed justified the crime was never even in the killer's reach.
But I declare she put on the air, she'd all
10 roads, 10 stages, 10 voices the genre never got to finish hearing.
If I could only...
Every one of these deaths is a letter the industry never had to write back. No apology, no reckoning, just a catalog that kept selling long after the person behind it was gone. If tonight's stories moved you, tell us in the comments which one hit hardest, and subscribe. Because we are not done uncovering the voices behind the legends. There are more roads, more storms, more forgotten nights waiting in the archive. The music never lies, even when the industry does.
I